led by the captain's 10th career 5-point outing, which is pretty ridiculous when you consider that he is not even 27 years of age. It certainly has been a good start for the Edmonton Oilers in 2024. Welcome to the panel presented by Sportsnet. Pleased to be joined by Jack Michaels and Bob Stauffer. And Jack, this is an Oilers hockey team that has won 6 straight hockey games in an offense that's seemingly coming at their opposition in waves, led by one of the most confident top sixes in the NHL.
Well, I think when you look at what Edmonton's done, it goes back to 2023, the way they closed it out. I mean, they've won 14 out of 17, and they've gotten that one ingredient that I think every winning club has, and that is internal competition. I think back to when I was a kid and used to watch the NBA. And I remember Kevin McHale had the game of his life and scored 56 points about 40 years ago for the Boston Celtics. Well, 2 weeks later, Larry Bird got 60 and said, you know what, I'm the best player on the team. I should have the team record. And to be honest with you, it was reminiscent of the last game of 2023 for me and the first game of 2024, where the second line had a huge night in Anaheim. They combined for 10 points. Warren Fogle had a 5-point night, 5 even strength points. The only guy along with Sam Gagner to do that for the Oilers in the last 35 years. And the very next game, where the entire morning was spent about talking about Draisaitl and Fogle and Ryan McLeod, and the top line goes out and does them one better with 11 points, and you mentioned McDavid with the 5. That's a good thing for Edmonton, the healthy competition. And you know what? I go back to what was achieved in 2023 in terms of the coaching change, Chris Knobloch, and him tabbing Ryan McLeod to go up and give Leon Draisaitl a little more speed on the wings. It seems to have, kind of activated the top 6. And it's not just been McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, and Hyman, who've been, in my opinion, the best line. I know a lot of people in Denver, Colorado would disagree, but you've got a very healthy competition amongst the top 6, and it's trickled down throughout the lineup. And that's where Bob's going to come in, because I think Paul Coffey's addition has helped spark a renaissance amongst the defense.
Bob, let's get right into that. How do you describe the changes we've seen on the Oilers' defensive side of the puck over the course of the last 7 weeks?
Well, just circling back to the forwards, there may be internal competition, but my expectation is 2 to 3 players will be added between now to the deadline. One will be Dylan Holloway at some point on a recall. So I think the forward depths are going to get even better. As for the defense, maybe to a certain degree, liberated is the word that I would use. I mean, if you're going to play zone defense, you got to use the middle of the ice in transition. You can't play everything up the wall. And unfortunately, that's what was happening in the first 5 or 6 games of the season. And, Paul Coffey said directly to me, he says, I went in there, I told the defenseman, nobody made more mistakes than me. So go make plays. And that, I think we've seen that. It's just, the defense, in terms of their ability to get the puck up the ice, use the middle of the ice for quick strike transitions, and also how the Oilers are moving around and the flow they have offensively and the activation of the defense and the movement that they have and creating the side-to-side looks and that sort of thing. And Jack talked a bit about McDavid with Nugent Hopkins and Hyman, and they have the best analytics in the league in terms of any forward line in the league. Well, guess what? The Oilers have a defense pairing right now with Ekholm and Bouchard that are 1-2 in either Corsi, Fenwick, or expected goals for. And I don't even know what Matthias was in the last game. Going into the last game, though, he was plus 37 in 54 games for the Oilers. So some people don't like that as a baseline stat, but the reality is they've been really good. And so we're seeing some things come to fruition here. I think Paul has, from his experience, and he was a special player, and sometimes that doesn't translate well with coaching, but I think he's got through his communication, and I think everybody can see it. It's just simply a more confident defensive group moving the puck up the ice.
All right, Jack, Bob talks about the movement. Let's talk about the movement and the composure displayed by number 74, Stuart Skinner. I mean, 11-2 in his last 13 starts, a .923 save percentage, and a 2.07 goals against average.
Well, and it's not just Stuart Skinner. I mean, you can't go on a 14-3 run and play a couple of sets of back-to-backs without your backup goaltender. And, Calvin Peckard, to his credit, has won 3 of his last 4. And Stuart Skinner, again, we've seen this before out of Stewart. He's capable of, providing this kind of goaltending. And ultimately, I think when you have to extricate yourself from the kind of hole the Oilers were in at 5-12-1, you have to go on a kind of run, but you can't do it all at one time. And I think what Bob's talked about and what I've talked about is just layering elements of the game, stacking good games upon one another. And you know what? When I think about this, quote-unquote streak the Oilers are on, I can't think of one signature game where Stuart Skinner's, made 50 saves, stood on his head, and absolutely stole one. But that's the whole point, isn't it? And Bob talked about the analytical side of it. I think the Oilers' win-loss record is starting to catch up to the kind of deeper numbers they've had all year. They've been a good 5-on-5 team all year. They've had a good power play. They've done a lot of things right, even when they weren't winning games. We kept talking about how the Oilers were getting goalied. Well, over the course of an 82-game season, and this is why they call it a marathon, not a sprint, you eventually see things start to even out. And the nice thing about Stuart Skinner is he's got the ideal personality for that sort of beginning that the Edmonton Oilers had to the season. He knows he's not an .850 goaltender. I mean, you talk to, the great baseball players, when they're in a slump 1 for 20, they know they're not 050 hitters. They know they're going to come out of it. And I think that's where Stuart Skinner's, composed nature and just his understanding of the business he's chosen, which is a goaltender, you're going to have those kind of starts. You're going to have those kind of lulls in the course of the year. So while I don't think he's been sensational, he's been exactly what Edmonton's needed through that stretch, and that's calm, composed, and ultimately he's helped stabilize things. And you know who else has done that? Chris Knobloch.
Chris Knobloch, that's my next point there, because last time we did the panel here, we talked about the coaching change on the Oilers bench, Bob, and the consistent messaging was that Chris Knobloch, he empowers his players, and we are seeing the byproduct of that right now.
Yeah, just circling back to the goaltenders for a second. I mean, you mentioned Calvin Pickard, great organizational number 3 goalie, and a guy the players want to play for. And in his starts, he's done a terrific job. Again, much like the situation with the forwards, the work's not done there. Let's just establish that right now. There's it's incumbent upon management to, be continuously looking to find ways to see if you can assist the process here for Stuart. And I mean, and the guy that understands that the best is Calvin Pickard. He has a job to do in the short term. Maybe it manifests into a longer situation, but I think the more likely scenario is there will be a goaltender added at some point. As for Knobloch, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised he's had winning streaks, because he had winning streaks when he was in Erie, and he had winning streaks in Hartford. And part of the reason why he had winning streaks is because he didn't overcomplicate things. He simplified, and that was part of, I look at Holloway, and I like Dylan a lot. I think there's a player there, and I think Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg are going to be on the Oilers full-time next season, but Dylan Holloway needed to play, and he could have come back in and possibly played on Saturday against Ottawa and maybe played 7-8 minutes, but if you're sitting on a 6-game winning streak, you kind of got to support the guys that helped you get that winning streak, and so, and you also have Sam Gagner as a potential return as well. So I think that Chris he has simplified things, he has calmed things, but don't think for a second that he's simple. He's a guy that understands that the key to coaching at any level is a couple things. The job of the coach is to get the most out of the players. It's the bottom line. Get the most out of the players. You get the most out of players at any level, your teams will be successful. And we are seeing that. And the other thing is, people say the NHL is not a developmental league. Bull. It is a developmental league, especially when you have players in a cap system. You have to have productivity from entry-level players. And so part of the ongoing progression and maturation of some of the Oilers players is because there's a realization from the coaching staff that they're continuously working at trying to get the most out of their players and growing their players. And I think that that's something that this coaching staff has embraced.
Bob, you mentioned the winning streak. The Oilers hope to extend it on Saturday night as they close out this 2-game homestand against the Ottawa Senators before embarking on a 3-game trip next week.